This is Blender. I'm going to go through making a block-based structure and having a wrecking ball smash it. It's perfect for beginners. You'll get to learn and explore some of the physics of Blender a bit, as well as using arrays. Let's get going. I'm going to click General, and right off the bat, let's add a floor. So add mesh plane. Okay, here it is. And now I'm going to stretch that out to a good size. Make sure, and maybe even a little bigger. There we are. And now let's go ahead and put this down at -1 so our blocks can be on it. Alright, with that, I'm going to click off of it. Let's get select. I'm going to go ahead and hide my light and camera just so they don't get in the way. And let's click on my block. The scale of my block. So I'm actually going to increase this some. I'm going to change this to 1.5 for Y, since it is going to be a brick, right? And then I'm going to 1.5. Yeah, that looks good. And then I'm going to go ahead and do edit mode, edges, and bevel the edges just a bit so it looks like a brick. Awesome. Great. So let's go back to object mode, and now let's start making our array. With this selected, I'm going to do a modifier, add modifier, array, and let's see, how many shall we do? Maybe 6. I'm going to actually switch this from 1 to 1.03. Is usually a good spacing. Yeah, that looks better. Okay. And now I'm going to go ahead and maybe we'll do 8. Apply. And now I'm going to do an array. And I'm going to then do 6. This is going to be 0 this time though, because this is going to be 1.03. And if we want to keep it, we could do 8 here as well. Alright, and let's hit apply on that. Finally, one more array, and this time, I guess we'll do 8. Oops. But this is going to be 0, and this is going to be 1.03. And now we have this nice tall structure. So let's get this on the plane. Okay. And I am going to shrink down the size of our plane as well. Good. Okay. Now that we have all of that, I'm going to go ahead and click on our cubes here. And what we want to do is we're going to add some physics. So I'm going to go over to physics. Oops, did I not? Make sure we apply that. Now I'm going to go to physics, and I'm going to do rigid body physics. Active is great. Let's do something like 0.1. And the rest of this should be good to go. Okay. Now that we've done that, we need to actually cut out these cubes so they're separate. So to do that, I need to be in edit mode. Now that I am in edit mode, I can go ahead and do select all, okay, and then mesh, separate by loose parts. And there we are. Great. Now back to object mode. Because now that we have done that, we're going to go object, set origin, origin to geometry. And now all of our individual bricks actually have their own origins. So what I want to do now is actually give these a material. I downloaded a picture all I did was search for concrete texture and it popped up. I will post a link in the description if I can find it. But here we are. I'm just going to add this material, right? And I'm going to click on this dot and go to image texture. What image? Well, open. I'm going to my downloads, and again, Google concrete texture stuff pops up. Let's do rough concrete. Open. And ta-da. So we need to make sure that the ground is ready to go, our pane down here. I'm going to click on our pane, and well, I guess I could add a material to it as well. Maybe just a really kind of darkish. Yep. Okay. And then it needs to have physics. So I'm going over to physics, rigid body, passive. Okay. And I might just move it over here. Let's go ahead and hit play and see what's going on. And that's what we would expect. The bricks are up a little bit. That's how we designed it. Cool. So now that that's all ready to go, the next step would be to create our wrecking ball, which is going to be fun, and chain. So I'm going to hit Z here. I'm going to pull up over here and zoom because we're about to add mesh torus. Pull this guy out. And what I'm going to do to create the chain effect, I'm going to go to object and the scale. The scale on the y-axis, let's try 2. And that's going to elongate the area. 2.5, how's that? I was more of a fan of 2. Okay, so that's looking good. And then we need it facing up. So 90 here. And, oh, nope, just kidding on that one. 90 here is what we need. Awesome. And we can also give this a bit of a gray color if we wanted. I have a texture for this as well, but maybe I'll stick with gray. Base color. Gonna have a real darkish chain, I guess. And it's going to be less rough. It's a chain. Maybe more silvery. All right. Anyways, there we are. That's looking great. So what am I going to do? I'm going to go to Object, Duplicate, and I'm going to pull up. When I do, I'm going to want that to be 0, that to be 0, because I know on this guy, 0 and 0. Great. So now what do I want here? I want it 90 degrees turned. There we are. And I need it down a bit. Yep. And I got that. So awesome. Now I'm going to hold down Shift and select both of these. I am then going to Object, Duplicate, and pull up. And that's looking good. So now I'm hitting Shift R to repeat. And we can make a pretty good size chain. That should be sufficient. Okay. That's looking great. So let's go ahead and pick out one of these points. We'll say this one, I guess. And then I need to add some physics to it. So we're going to go over to the physics tab. And it is going to be rigid body physics. Rigid body, active. That is almost correct. All we need now is the shape. And for a chain, we are going to want mesh. So now that I have this selected as mesh shape, I'm going to hold down Shift, select my entire chain, go to Object, go to, where's rigid body? Rigid body, and copy from active. Let's go ahead and play. And there we are. Our chain is working out fine. So let's go ahead now and get this up and into position to smash our cinder block little building. Grab that. Let me get from the z-axis here. And since it is going to be going back and forth, we are going to want to have the chain facing in the right direction for that. Okay, that looks great. I'm going to pull it up a bit. And so what I'm going to want to do now is I need to make sure that this part doesn't move, right? It's going to hold the chain up here and our balls. So to do that, all we would need is to uncheck dynamic over here. If we uncheck dynamic, that chain will stick right where it's placed. All right. And now I need to add one more thing. I'm actually going to go into edit mode to make this thing, this sphere, part of the chain. There it is. Okay. And then let's increase this scale. And that looks good to me. So what we can do now with this, well, we could even make our wrecking ball. It's our party. Great. And so let's go ahead and head over to object mode, and let's make sure to set the origin object. Set origin to geometry, and then I want this bottom one, the ball and the chain, to actually have a dark color. So I'm going to go over here to materials, something more like and now we just have one thing left. I'm going to click on this top chain up here. Let's switch to 3D cursor. Object, snap cursor to selected. And now with my 3D cursor, I'm going to use rotate. And oh, Command Z on that. I need to get all of this. There we go. And now I'm going to rotate like this. Okay. And let's make sure and let's give it a bit more weight, maybe 5, and let's go ahead and test. Whoop-pow! Awesome. And there is our wrecking ball. I'm going to flip this to be rendered in cycles. Let's go ahead and pause this, go over here. I'm going to move this. Let's go down, over. Boosh. And the building looks pretty awesome. I'm going to go add some lighting and render this thing. It's going to be great. If you're still watching, make sure to hit like, make sure to hit subscribe. It gives me warm fuzzies, makes the world a better place, and all of that stuff. If you make something really cool, you should definitely tell me about it below.